Hey there people, good day to you all, and today I have my Terraria Expert Mode Guide plus Hardcore and Hard Mode explained. In other words, I'm actually explaining what is Expert Mode. I'm answering that question. I'll be explaining and comparing Expert Mode, Hardcore, and Hard Mode for people who don't yet understand what those things mean. Of course, a lot of PC players already know what these things mean, but this is important now that the 1.3 equivalent update has come to PS4. It will be coming soon to Xbox One and other console and mobile platforms later. Specifically, the Nintendo Switch is supposed to get that when Terraria is finally released for that, along with iOS and Android are supposed to get that update later. So for all you people who are new to this, Expert Mode is selected when creating the world. It's a world-based difficulty level, and this is all about difficulty levels. So when you go in here and you create a new world, it gives you the option of size, of course, but it also gives you the option normal or expert once you have the 1.3 equivalent update. So yeah, far greater difficulty and loot, fortune and glory, kid. So whereas normal is, of course, the standard, when you choose expert, it is going to make some changes to the difficulty of the world, and everything about expert applies to the world and anyone playing in that world. When you leave that world, if you go back to a normal world, you're just going to be playing normal again. But if you're playing on an expert world, it changes the gameplay. It's not just harder, but it has unique gameplay and some things that can be called benefits. It has some additional items and boss treasure bags. It is harder though, so let's get into the details. So enemies will have 2 times as much health, do 2 times as much damage. They're a little more knockback resistant, and they inflict more debuffs. Weaker enemies are boosted further once you get to hard mode, and some enemies at least, are also boosted for additional players in multiplayer. So each additional player, they get a little extra health, a little extra damage kind of thing. Enemies and bosses also have some AI changes with more difficult attack patterns. Several enemies actually gain new or upgraded attacks, and enemies can spawn in towns. Normally, if you're in normal mode, if you get a big enough NPC village, enemies will stop spawning in your NPC town, but in Expert, they will continue to spawn. Enemies can also pick up coins and items that are dropped by players. So if you die, you drop coins, of course, and depending on your player difficulty, which I'll get to later, you may also drop items, or you can, of course, throw items on the ground. Enemies can actually pick those up, which often results in permanently lost money when you die, unless you can manage to get back and kill that enemy before it despawns. Of course, if you go off screen, the enemy usually despawns, and then you won't be getting your money back. So unless another player is present, that enemy will often despawn. So here we are. I'm now in an expert world, obviously just starting out here. So I'm going to keep explaining some of the differences while I play a little. So the enemies will actually also drop more loot and have actually slightly higher chances to drop a lot of items. And you'll see that if you go to the wiki and you look at items that you're looking for. If you're an expert, the drop rates are slightly higher. So there are some benefits in terms of that as well. You can sort of, I mean, it's going to be harder to kill the enemies, but you're going to get your items a little more likely. There are also changes to some of the events. There's some difficulty-based adjustments there as well. And players actually drop more money when they die. If they're softcore players, normally in normal, you drop 50% of your money. In expert, you'll drop 75% of your money. And you'll also take longer to respawn when you're in expert. Bosses will gain increased health as well. And that actually increases further based on player count in multiplayer. So if you want like a more authentic difficulty experience, if you're playing multiplayer, that's actually sort of a benefit. It's more of a challenge to fight the bosses in multiplayer on expert. There are some general gameplay changes as well. You'll get more items from pots, more money from fishing quests, enemy banners that you get when you kill like 50, 100, and so on will be more effective. You'll actually get a bigger boost from those banners that you place around. Those will cut down your enemies a little more. Life regeneration is actually less effective without the well-fed buff. So that well-fed buff becomes more important that you get from eating food. And the defense stat at the same time is actually 25% more effective. So your defense is more effective, and yet at the same time the enemies do twice as much damage. So you're still going to get hurt more. Make no mistake about that. You are still going to get hurt more, but the damage stat offsets that a little bit if you've got, you know, good armor and so on. You also get the chilled debuff if you go into water in the snow biome, and most debuffs in the game will last twice as long. So, you know, that's, again, difficulty based. Now, one of the big things, actually, about Expert is the treasure bags that are dropped from bosses, and these are dropped for each player in multiplayer that survives the boss fight to pick up. So if you're present and alive when the boss is beaten, you will get a treasure bag. And this is a benefit since it's no longer possible for one player to grab everything. The treasure bags are actually spawned on the client side, so each person gets their own treasure bag that nobody else can take. And these treasure bags actually contain all of the normal loot that you would get from defeating one of the bosses, but they also contain the a chance of getting some developer items, which is where you get like the Red's wings and some of those awesome costumes that were originally created for the developers. You have a chance of getting those in any expert mode treasure bag from a boss fight. And also, you get expert exclusive items, and those are from the treasure bags only, as far as I'm aware. Basically, each boss, almost every boss, in Expert, there are a few exceptions, but almost every boss drops a treasure bag, and almost every treasure bag has a specific item for that boss that will be included in that treasure bag. So those are the additional Expert mode items, the developer items, and those treasure bag items that you get from the bosses. So basically, Expert is good if you want a challenge, if you want some extra new items, and for multiplayer because well, there's the treasure bag thing where everybody gets their own treasure bag when you defeat a boss, and there's also the difficulty in terms of it being a little more of a challenge for you. So that's expert mode summed up right there. Now the question is hardcore mode. What is hardcore mode? Well, hardcore mode is a difficulty mode for your player character as opposed to the world. So hardcore difficulty is a difficulty that applies to your character regardless of which world you're in. There's actually 3 difficulty levels: softcore, medium core, and hardcore, which determines mostly just what happens when your player dies. So on console, softcore is called normal and medium core is called difficult. But so if I create a new character, you have the choice in all of these options here. By default, it's softcore. So again, softcore is the default and easiest level. You normally will drop half your coins on death and respawn. Again, if you're an expert, you'll drop 75% of your coins. If you're on mobile and 3DS, it actually doesn't give you this option. All characters are created as softcore. But if you're on any other platform, and this is not 1.3 only, you have the choice. So again, softcore characters drop money on death. Medium core is sort of medium level. You drop all your items when you die. You can come back and pick them up. You will drop all your coins, all your items, all your ammo, and you will still respawn as you would for a softcore character, but you'll drop all your stuff. If you can get back fast enough, if other players or expert level enemies, because again, expert mode enemies can pick up your coins and your items. So if players and enemies don't pick them up first, you can come back and get your stuff. But you're going to drop all your stuff if you're on medium core, and you're going to hope that you can get it back. Of course, you can put stuff in your in chests and stuff like that as well. And then hardcore, die for good. And that's what hardcore means. When you die permanently. You drop all your items, again, money, items in general, and ammo, and you turn into a ghost. So I'm going to call this guy Hardcore Guy. And yeah, so that's what hardcore means. It's permadeath. It's like a roguelike game. when you die, and that's it. You will turn into a ghost, which is able to move around the map. So you can actually use that to explore the map. you can create a hardcore character, explore the map as a ghost, and that's sort of a cheat. That is possible, but when your character dies, it's dead, and when you leave, you cannot interact with the map. You cannot open like your map. You can't go into the menu and open your map if you're a ghost. But when you finally quit the game from being a ghost, you don't come back. Your character is actually deleted, and even the stuff like if you have a piggy bank or a safe or that Dungeon Defenders Forge thing, it's all gone, and it gets deleted with your character. It doesn't come back. There ain't no coming back from death as a hardcore character, and that's what hardcore means. So you're invisible, by the way, as a ghost to other players. And I'm about to die here, so you'll see. Other players in multiplayer will not be able to see you if you're a ghost. And there you go. Slain, dropped money, and oh, I'm not coming back. So that's what hardcore means. And that should be distinguished from hard mode, which I also want to explain to you. See, here we are. I'm a hardcore ghost now. And that's all that you get. So you can still reveal the map, and you can see it in the map in the top corner, but you can no longer go to the menu and actually look at your map. You can still chat with people, so that's in there, but basically you die as a hardcore player, you become a ghost, and you can no longer actually do anything except wander aimlessly around the map. See, I can't even light the tunnel. And that's what hardcore is. You die, you become a ghost. When you quit, that's it. Your character is actually deleted. So hard mode, if you haven't figured that out yet, most players who have played Terraria for some time will know what hard mode is. But hard mode is changes made in the world after you defeat the wall of flesh. So pre-hard mode, you are going through and you get your armor and your weapons and stuff, and then eventually you defeat the wall of flesh, and it's almost like starting over because you get new enemies, new items, new ores, and so on. Again, familiar to most Terraria players who have played for some time. But this is not something that is chosen when you create the world. It's not something that's chosen in any way except for by defeating the wall of flesh. It's a result of progression through the game, and it's like if you've played the original Super Mario Brothers, you defeat the game, and then you get what's called the new quest, where they replace some of the enemies, and you know, the enemies move faster and stuff. It's like a harder version of the same game, and that's what hard mode basically is. You're sort of you're not actually starting the game over. You still have all your stuff, but you have a new quest with new enemies, new items, and it's a lot harder. That's why it's called hard mode. But it's just a result of progression through the game. You defeat the wall of flesh, and you go into hard mode. And yeah, there's a lot more content. It's like a whole new version of the game, and that's what hard mode is. So ultimately, there are three things. There's world difficulty, as in normal and expert worlds, and then there's player difficulty, as in softcore, medium core, and hardcore players. And you can combine those in any combination. You can have a softcore player in an expert world, or you can have a hardcore player in a normal world, or if you're really up for a challenge, you can do a hardcore player in an expert world. And that is going to be the ultimate challenge, of course, because if you die, you're not coming back. And you're going to die pretty easily in expert. And then there's the progression-related difficulty. So once you defeat the wall of flesh, you have like sort of a new quest, and that's hard mode. So again, there's so many levels of difficulty and so many ways of adjusting the difficulty in Terraria, and that's what makes it you know, something that you can go back to and something that you can challenge yourself with, because you're going to start out, like I did, with a softcore player in a normal world probably, and that's definitely how I recommend you start. But you know, as you want to play through the game and do something more challenging, you can start, if you want, with either going to an expert world or giving yourself a medium core or a hardcore player, and you can give yourself more of a challenge anytime by doing those things. You can create a more difficult player, you can create a more difficult world, and of course you can get to hard mode by defeating the wall of flesh. And you can do all of those things together if you want to. I mean, just think about it. Hardcore, expert, hard mode, all of those at the same time, that's going to be quite the challenge. So hope you liked the video. I hope that explanation helps some of you who might have been confused by those things. And thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.